At my son's wedding, the bride told me to sit in the corner so I wouldn't embarrass the family. The guests burst out laughing. I wanted to disappear. A few days later, a lawyer handed me my late husband's marriage fund contract. The bride must respect her mother-in-law, or the fund is frozen immediately. I'm just an ordinary housewife in my 50s. You want to know how this story really unfolded? Follow along and tell me where you're watching this from. The wedding hall was dazzling. Chandeliers glittered overhead. Roses lined the aisle. Champagne flutes caught the light. Every guest looked polished, as though they had stepped out of a magazine spread. And then there was me. I wore an old dress. Not stylish. Not expensive. But it was the last gift my late husband ever gave me. I could not imagine wearing anything else on my son's wedding day. To me, it was priceless. To others, it was laughable. Oh my God, she really showed up in that. I overheard one young guest whisper. Another snapped a picture on her phone. Grinning. Heat crept up my neck. I told myself to stay calm, to keep breathing. Emily, my new daughter-in-law, walked over in her sparkling white gown. She looked radiant, the kind of bride who belonged on the cover of a bridal magazine. But when she turned to me, her words sliced through the air. You can sit in the corner. We don't want you embarrassing the family. She said it as if it were the most natural arrangement in the world. The laughter that followed was sharp and merciless. Someone even added, "The bride's right. Old-fashioned mothers-in-law should know their place." My stomach clenched. My hands shook so hard I had to hold my clutch tighter just to steady myself. I turned toward Kevin, my son, the man who once held my hand when he was small and afraid of thunderstorms. He stood tall in his tuxedo, his arm linked with Emily's. He said nothing. He only gave a faint nod, as if agreeing with her. I forced a thin smile. All right. I'll sit in the corner. They put me at the furthest table, near the exit, my chair facing away from the stage. I sat with a glass of water, while laughter and music filled the rest of the hall. She's pitiful. Someone murmured behind me. Not pitiful. Just poor. Another voice answered, full of scorn. My chest ached. When Kevin and Emily made their rounds, toasting each table, they skipped mine. I finally whispered, Kevin, did you forget me? For a moment, the entire room went still. Then the laughter started again, louder than before. Emily smiled at the crowd and said, she gets emotional sometimes. Don't mind her. And Kevin, my only son, looked at me with cold eyes and said, Mom, stop making a scene. The words cut deeper than anything else. I looked up at the glittering chandeliers, blinking back tears. If my husband were alive, he would never have let this happen. The rest of the night passed in a blur. People cheered. They danced. They posed for photographs. I sat like a shadow, invisible, forgotten. When I left the hall, I carried more than my clutch. I carried the crushing weight of humiliation. I thought that was the end of it, that I would spend the rest of my days quietly pushed aside, my dignity stripped away. I was wrong. Days later, a lawyer came to see me. He carried a folder and spoke carefully, almost cautiously. Inside the folder was a contract, drafted years ago by my late husband. It was a marriage fund agreement. The money would support our son's wedding. But there was a condition. The bride must respect her mother-in-law. If she failed, the fund would be frozen. I read the words twice, 3 times, my hands trembling, my breath shallow. For the first time since that wedding day, I felt something stir inside me. Hope. The days after the wedding should have been filled with joy. Newlyweds celebrating, families growing closer, relatives sharing warm meals together. That's what I had imagined. At least. Instead, I found myself replaying every moment from that corner table, each memory sharper than the last. At the reception, I had hoped the humiliation would end after Emily's little announcement. But it only grew worse as the night went on. From my seat near the exit, I could see everything. Emily laughing with her bridesmaids, Kevin posing for photos, relatives from both families clinking glasses and making toasts. What I couldn't see was a single friendly face turned in my direction. I tried to strike up a conversation with a cousin I hadn't seen in years. She smiled stiffly, then excused herself within seconds. Another relative avoided my eyes altogether. It was as though Emily's words had given everyone permission to treat me like a stain on the evening. Even the servers seemed to take their cues from the new bride. Champagne poured generously at every table except mine. Plates of appetizers skipped past me. When dessert came, I had to ask twice before anyone brought me a slice of cake, and by then it was nearly melted. Why bother? I overheard a woman whisper, "She's not really part of this family anymore. Not with her husband gone." That sentence stayed lodged in my chest. My husband, Kevin's father, had died years ago. He wasn't there to defend me, to remind these people that I was still the mother of the groom, still part of the family. Without him, it seemed I had no standing at all. Then came the toasts. Kevin's new in-laws raised their glasses, praising Emily's beauty, her charm, her modern values. The word stung modern, as though I were some relic from a past better forgotten. When it was Kevin's turn to speak, I held my breath. Maybe, finally, he would say something. A small acknowledgement. A thank you for raising him, for being there. But he didn't. He thanked Emily, her parents, even her distant relatives. My name never left his lips. The crowd cheered anyway. The music swelled, and the celebration carried on. But I sat frozen. My hands clenched so tightly around my glass that my knuckles turned white. I told myself not to cry. Not here. Not now. I swallowed every lump in my throat and kept my eyes fixed on the sparkling chandeliers above me, as though they might hold me together. When the night finally ended, I slipped out quietly. No hugs. No goodbyes. The guests were still laughing, still clinking glasses, while I pushed open the heavy doors and stepped into the cold night air alone. In the silence of my small car, parked at the farthest corner of the lot, I let the tears fall. They burned hot against my cheeks, each one carrying the weight of being cast aside by the people I loved most. I thought that was the lowest point, that I couldn't possibly be humiliated any further. But the real pain came days later, when I learned my son and his bride were moving into the family house, and I was no longer welcome in my own home. I always believed the family house would be my safe place. My husband and I bought it decades ago, brick by brick, saving every dollar we could. We raised Kevin there. His first steps, his first day of school, his prom night, all of it happened under that roof. After my husband passed, the house became even more sacred to me. It was where his memory lived. But a few days after the wedding, Kevin showed up with Emily at my door. They didn't knock politely. They walked in like they owned the place. Emily's eyes swept the living room. She frowned at the old photographs on the wall, the worn sofa, the vase I'd kept since my wedding day. "This place feels outdated," she said, her voice dripping with disapproval. Kevin nodded. "We'll fix it up. Modernize it." I stood there, clutching the dish towel I'd been holding, my heart thudding in my chest. "What do you mean we?" I asked. Emily smiled, but it wasn't kind. "Kevin and I are moving in. This will be our home now. You can stay in the attic until you figure out something else." My knees nearly buckled. The attic? My own house. And they wanted to banish me to the attic like some unwanted guest. I tried to steady my voice. "This is my home. Your father and I built this together. You can't just push me aside." Kevin's jaw tightened. "Mom, don't make this harder than it has to be. Emily's right. You'll be more comfortable upstairs. We need space. Privacy." Comfortable? The attic had no heat, no proper windows, just boxes and dust. It wasn't meant for living. Emily folded her arms. "It's only fair. We're starting our marriage. And honestly, it's embarrassing to tell people we live with a mother-in-law. Everyone expects us to have our own space." I stared at her, Speechless. The same woman who told me to sit in the corner at the wedding was now telling me to disappear in my own house. Mom, Kevin said firmly, it's either the attic or... He let the words hang in the air. But I understood the threat. Or nothing. Or leave. I felt the walls of my life closing in on me. I had been humiliated at the wedding, laughed at by strangers. But this was worse. This was my son, my only child, telling me I no longer belonged in the one place that had always been mine. I wanted to scream, to tell them both to get out, to remind Kevin that every inch of this house was built with his father's sweat, with my sacrifices. But the words caught in my throat. Instead, I whispered, fine. The attic. Emily's smile widened. She looked satisfied, as though she just won a battle. Kevin didn't even look at me. He was already busy measuring the living room, talking about where they'd put new furniture. I climbed the stairs alone that night, past the walls filled with family photos, into the dark, dusty attic. I sat on an old trunk, wrapped in my late husband's coat, and felt more alone than I ever had in my life. I thought I had reached my breaking point. But I didn't know then that a single phone call from the lawyer was about to change everything. I was still adjusting to life in the attic when the phone rang. The voice on the other end introduced himself as Robert Hughes, an attorney who had once handled my late husband's estate. He said he needed to meet with me in person. I almost told him no. I was tired, humiliated, drained. But something in his tone, steady, deliberate, made me agree. We set a time for the next morning. When he arrived, he didn't waste words on small talk. He opened his leather briefcase, pulled out a thick folder, and slid it across my kitchen table. This, he said, tapping the papers, is your late husband's marriage fund contract. I frowned, confused. Marriage fund? Robert adjusted his glasses. Yes. Years ago, before he passed, your husband created a trust for Kevin's future wedding. He wanted to make sure his son had support to start married life. But he also attached conditions. He flipped through the contract until he found the highlighted section. He turned the document so I could read it myself. The bride must show respect to the groom's mother. Should this condition be violated, the marriage fund will be immediately frozen and withheld in full. I read it twice, then a third time. My eyes wide, my pulse quickening. I looked up at Robert. You're saying? He nodded. I'm saying that if Kevin's wife has disrespected you, repeatedly and publicly, the fund can be locked. Immediately. No appeals. I sat back in my chair, my hands trembling. Images flooded my mind. Emily telling me to sit in the corner. The laughter of the guests. Her sneer when she ordered me into the attic. Does this really hold up? I whispered. Robert's expression didn't change. It does. Your husband worded it carefully. He wanted to protect you, Mrs. Thompson. He anticipated this very situation. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than humiliation. It was like a spark deep in my chest, a small flame of hope that threatened to grow stronger if I let it. Though, I hesitated. If I enforce this, what happens to them? Robert clasped his hands. The fund is substantial. It paid for the wedding venue, the down payment on the house renovations, and the honeymoon. Without it, they'll face serious financial consequences. Loans. Defaults. I pressed a hand to my lips. Kevin and Emily had flaunted their new lifestyle with such confidence, as if money would never be an issue. They never once thanked me, never even considered the sacrifices his father and I had made. And here was the truth. All of it was conditional. Robert studied me quietly. You don't have to decide right now. But I need you to understand you hold the key. The moment you choose, the fund can be frozen. Permanently. I closed the folder slowly, my fingers tracing the edge. Emily's mocking smile flashed before me. Kevin's cold voice, telling me to stop making a scene, echoed in my ears. For the first time since that humiliating wedding night, I felt the balance shift. Maybe I wasn't as powerless as they wanted me to believe. I had hoped the wedding humiliation would be the worst of it. I told myself that once the excitement died down, maybe Emily would soften. Maybe she would look back at her words and feel even a hint of shame. Maybe my son would finally stand up for me. But within days, I realized it wasn't going to get better. It was going to get worse. Emily carried herself through the house like she owned every inch of it. She walked through the living room, eyeing the framed photographs, the shelves stacked with books, the little decorations my husband and I had collected over decades of marriage. Her lips curled. "This place is suffocating," she muttered one evening, dropping a stack of shopping bags on the couch. "Everything looks so old. Kevin, we need to tear it all out and start fresh." Kevin glanced at her, then at me, and shrugged. He didn't say no. He didn't say anything at all. I put down the dish I'd been drying and stepped closer. "That table," I said, pointing to the one she was leaning against. "Your father built it with his own hands. We didn't have much money back then. He worked late hours, and when he came home, he stayed up even later just to finish it for me. That table is part of our family." Emily laughed, a sharp sound that filled the room. "Your father is gone, and we're the family now. Don't you think it's time to move on from all this sentimental clutter?" The words stabbed like a knife. My husband reduced to clutter. I turned to Kevin, waiting for him to correct her, to remind her that this was his father's home. But he avoided my eyes, picked up one of her shopping bags, and carried it upstairs. Later that week, Emily announced she was throwing a party. She called it a housewarming, though the house was already mine. I overheard her in the kitchen, talking loudly on the phone. "Yes, we'll invite everyone," she said, tapping her nails on the counter. "I want them to see how well we're living. No one's going to think Kevin married down. We'll show them we're doing better than any of them." I stepped into the doorway. "Emily, this is my home. You can't just invite people without even asking me." She turned slowly, her eyes glittering. "Your home? Don't you mean our home? Kevin and I are married now. What's his is mine. And what's yours? Well, let's just say you should be grateful we haven't asked you to leave yet." Her voice was calm, but her words dripped with venom. Kevin walked in as she said it. For a split second, I thought he might finally defend me, but instead, he slipped his arm around her waist and kissed her temple. "Whatever you want, babe," he murmured. My mouth went dry. On the night of the party, the house was filled with strangers. Music boomed, expensive wine bottles popped open, and people laughed loudly in every room. Emily floated around in a new dress, pointing out what she planned to remodel: the kitchen, the furniture, even the staircase. I stayed upstairs in the attic, listening to the noise echo through the floorboards. My space smelled of dust and mothballs. The light bulb overhead flickered when the music downstairs grew too loud. I wrapped myself tighter in my husband's old coat, the one piece of comfort I had left. But I couldn't block out the voices. "Where's the mother-in-law?" I heard someone ask. Emily's laugh rang out. "Up in the attic, where she belongs. Don't worry, she won't bother us." The crowd roared with laughter. I pressed both hands over my ears, but I couldn't shut out the sound of my humiliation being served like entertainment. Later, when the guests left, I came down to find the house trashed, wine stains on the carpet, broken glass on the kitchen floor, cigarette smoke clinging to the curtains. Emily sat on the sofa, scrolling on her phone, while Kevin carried out garbage bags. I stood in the doorway, fists clenched. "You humiliated me tonight. Again. Do you enjoy that?" Emily didn't even look up. "You're too sensitive. If you want respect, you have to earn it. Hiding in the attic doesn't help your case." Kevin said nothing. He just kept bagging up trash, his silence louder than her cruelty. I turned and climbed back up the stairs, but this time something felt different. I wasn't just humiliated. I was angry. In the quiet of the attic, I pulled out the folder Robert Hughes had given me, the marriage fund contract. The words glared up at me. The bride must show respect to the groom's mother. I remembered her words at the wedding. Sit in the corner. I remembered her smirk when she said I should be grateful just to stay in my own house. I remembered the laughter downstairs that very night, as she told her friends I belonged in the attic. She wasn't just disrespectful. She had crossed every line my husband had tried to protect me from. The lawyer's voice echoed in my head. You hold the key. The moment you choose, the fund can be frozen permanently. I closed the folder, my hand trembling. For the first time, I felt the weight of power sitting firmly in my lap. And I knew sooner or later I was going to use it. The attic was quiet, but my mind wasn't. Every word Emily had spoken replayed over and over, echoing against the bare rafters. The wedding humiliation, the corner table, the attic banishment, the party where she mocked me to strangers. It wasn't just disrespect anymore. It was a pattern, a campaign to erase me from my own life. That night, I took the lawyer's folder out again and stared at the contract. My husband's handwriting was scrawled in the margins of one page, a note he had left for the attorney years ago. Protect her. Make sure she's never pushed aside. I ran my fingers across those words. He had seen it coming. Somehow. He had known I would need protection, even from our own family. The next morning, I called Robert Hughes. My voice shook when he answered. I have proof, I told him. He didn't hesitate. Bring it to my office. Today. I gathered everything I had. My phone with the wedding photos. The USB drive a distant cousin had mailed me with video clips from the reception. She had written a note. Thought you might want this. Some of us couldn't believe how they treated you. When I arrived at Robert's office, I handed over the drive with both hands. He inserted it into his computer, and together we watched. The video opened with Emily in her gown, smiling sweetly at the guests. Then came the moment. Her voice was crystal clear, recorded on multiple phones. You can sit in the corner. We don't want you embarrassing the family. The room laughed. Kevin stood by her side, silent. Robert leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. That's it. That's all we need. I blinked. Unsure. That's enough? He nodded firmly. It's explicit. Public. Recorded. The contract doesn't require ongoing disrespect. It requires proof of any violation. This isn't just a violation. It's humiliation. In front of witnesses. I gripped the arms of my chair. The idea felt unreal. After weeks of being powerless, suddenly the ground had shifted beneath my feet. What happens next? I asked quietly. Robert closed the folder and slid it back toward me. I'll notify the bank that holds the trust. Once I submit this evidence, the fund is locked. Their credit lines will vanish. The honeymoon, the renovations, the party bills, it all collapses. I swallowed hard. I could almost hear Emily's laugh. See the way she smirked when she told her friends I belonged in the attic. The image burned brighter than my hesitation. But still, I asked, should I wait? Should I give them another chance? Robert looked at me carefully. That's your decision. But understand this. People like Emily don't change when given space. They push harder. You've already seen it. I left his office with the folder clutched to my chest. The contract heavier than ever. Outside, the autumn air was crisp, the trees shedding their leaves. For the first time in weeks, I walked with my head a little higher. Back at the house, Emily barely looked at me as I passed through the living room. She was sprawled across the couch, phone in hand, laughing into the speaker. She's practically invisible. She was saying, I told my friend she lives upstairs like a tenant. Can you believe it? Her voice carried into the hallway, loud enough that she wanted me to hear. I paused on the stairs, my hand tightening around the banister. She thought she had won. She thought I was beaten. But she didn't know about the contract. She didn't know her laughter was about to cost her everything. I went back to the attic that night and set the folder on the trunk where I kept my husband's coat. For the first time since the wedding, I didn't cry myself to sleep. I had the proof. I had the power. And soon, they would understand what it meant. By the time the second weekend rolled around, the house no longer felt like mine at all. Emily had stripped the place of anything that reminded her of me. Family photos disappeared from the walls. My husband's tools, once neatly stored in the garage, were shoved into boxes and dragged into the attic with me. Even the rug I had chosen with care decades ago was rolled up and tossed aside like trash. The party she had hosted wasn't enough. Now she wanted more. She planned another gathering, this time a dinner with Kevin's colleagues from work. They need to see the kind of home we've built together. She bragged on the phone as she arranged catering. A wife who knows how to host. A husband who's moving up. They'll see we're not ordinary. We're on another level. When I asked if she needed help in the kitchen, she gave me a look that could have frozen ice. No, thank you, she said sweetly, though her eyes were sharp. You just stay upstairs. The last thing we need is for you to wander in and make things awkward. Kevin didn't argue. He just kept scrolling on his phone, nodding absently like her words made perfect sense. That night, the guests arrived in crisp suits and polished dresses. The table downstairs gleamed with candles and fine china. Laughter floated up the stairs as I sat in the attic, the muffled music thrumming through the floorboards. I told myself I'd stay hidden, that I could endure one more night. But the sound of their voices carried too clearly, their words slicing through the wooden beams. Where's Kevin's mom? One guest asked. Emily didn't miss a beat. Up in the attic, she said with a laugh. It's better for everyone. She doesn't exactly fit in with our crowd. The guests chuckled. Another voice chimed in. Smart move. Most newlyweds would never tolerate a mother-in-law under the same roof. Exactly, Emily replied. But we're generous. We let her stay. It's almost like having a live-in ghost. She's harmless, as long as she stays out of sight. The room erupted in laughter. Sir, my hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped the glass of water I was holding. My face burned hot, shame and fury colliding inside me. I crept halfway down the stairs, just far enough to see the glow of the dining room and the outline of their silhouettes. Emily sat at the head of the table, perfectly at ease, her hand resting lightly on Kevin's arm. My son smiled, basking in the attention, not once defending me. I wanted to storm in, to shout, to throw the contract in their faces and watch their smug smiles collapse. But I stopped myself. Because Robert's words echoed in my head. The more evidence, the stronger the case. And Emily had just handed me more. I retreated back into the attic, my heart pounding. I opened the folder again and added notes in the margins. Dinner with colleagues. Guests laughed. Emily called me a ghost. Every insult was another nail in her coffin. When the last guest left and the house went quiet, Emily's laughter still rang in my ears. She thought she had won. She thought I was powerless, hidden away like an embarrassment. But the truth was the opposite. Every word she spoke, every cruel laugh, every time she treated me like I didn't matter, it was all building the case against her. And soon, she was going to learn exactly what it cost to mock me. The call came 2 days after that dinner. Robert's voice was calm, almost too calm. It's time, he said. I've submitted everything. The trust administrators have reviewed the evidence. The fund is frozen effective immediately. For a moment I couldn't speak. My throat tightened as I clutched the phone. You mean all of it? Every dollar. He confirmed. The down payment for the renovations, the honeymoon expenses, even the accounts tied to their joint credit lines. Effective this morning. The money is gone. I sank into a chair, my chest heaving with something I hadn't felt in weeks. Relief. Not joy. Not yet. But relief. That evening, the explosion came. Kevin burst into the attic without knocking, his face red, his hair disheveled like he'd been pulling at it. Emily followed close behind, her mascara smudged from crying. What did you do? Kevin shouted. The bank called. They froze everything. Our accounts are empty. The honeymoon's canceled. The contractors walked off the job. What did you tell them? I sat still, my hands folded in my lap. I didn't tell them anything. Your father did. Emily's eyes blazed. Don't play games with me. The bank said it was tied to the marriage fund. That trust was supposed to support us. You ruined it. I tilted my head, letting the silence stretch before I spoke. Your father wrote the terms years ago. The bride must respect her mother-in-law. Otherwise, the money disappears. You remember the wedding, don't you? You remember what you said? Emily's face twisted. That was a joke. Everyone laughed. You're really going to destroy us over a joke? I stood slowly, my voice steady. A joke doesn't follow me to the attic. A joke doesn't have you calling me a ghost in front of strangers. This wasn't a joke. Emily, this was who you are. Kevin's fists clenched at his sides. Mom, you can't do this to us. We need that money. You're being selfish. I stepped closer. Close enough that he had to meet my eyes. Selfish? Do you know what selfish is? It's forcing your own mother into an attic. It's standing silent while your wife humiliates me in front of everyone I know. Your father set this condition because he knew respect was the only thing that mattered. And you let her take even that away from me. Emily's voice rose to a shriek. Unfreeze it. Call that lawyer and fix it right now. Or what? I asked softly. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came. She wasn't used to me pushing back. I turned away and reached for the folder lying on the trunk. I held it up so they both could see. It's over. The fund is gone, and nothing you scream at me will bring it back. Emily let out a cry so sharp it rattled the rafters. She sank onto the attic floor, sobbing into her hands. Kevin just stared at me, his face pale, his world crumbling in real time. Downstairs, the phone rang again. I knew it would be the contractors, the vendors, the people they had promised to pay with money that no longer existed. The collapse had already begun, and for the first time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen. I felt heard. I felt powerful. The fallout came faster than even Robert predicted. The morning after the fund was frozen, the contractors who had been tearing through the house stormed up to the door, demanding payment. Their voices carried across the yard, sharp and angry. You promised the check would clear. One shouted, we're pulling everything out until we're paid. I stood at the top of the stairs and watched from the shadows as Kevin tried to calm them, his face pale, sweat beading on his forehead. Emily hovered behind him, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin line. We'll sort it out, Kevin said, his voice unsteady. Just give us a little more time. The foreman laughed. A bitter sound. Time doesn't cover bills. You've got 24 hours, or we're filing a lien on this house. When the men left, Kevin slammed the door so hard the glass rattled. Emily spun on him instantly. This is your fault. She snapped. You should have controlled your mother. Now look at us ruined. I didn't move from my place upstairs, but I could hear every word. Kevin's voice broke. What do you expect me to do? The contract was Dad's. We can't change it. She has the power. Emily's sobs came next, high-pitched and ugly. Do you know what people are saying about me already? That I disrespected you. That I cost us everything. My friends are texting nonstop. My parents called this morning. They want to know why the checks bounced for the reception. They're furious. Kevin didn't answer. His silence was its own admission. Their world was crumbling. By the next day, the story had spread beyond whispers. Neighbors leaned against their fences, whispering as I walked past to collect the mail. I caught words like frozen fund and disrespectful bride. One even muttered, serves her right, when they thought I couldn't hear. Emily stopped leaving the house. She locked herself in the bedroom, curtains drawn, crying into her phone. Kevin worked longer hours. Or maybe he was just hiding at the office to escape the chaos. The bills kept coming. The vendors called daily. The credit cards were declined. Piece by piece, the glamorous life Emily had tried to build around herself shattered. One evening, Her parents showed up unannounced. Their faces were hard. Their voices clipped. "You humiliated us." Her mother hissed. "Do you have any idea how this looks? Our daughter marries into money, only to lose it within weeks because she couldn't keep her mouth shut?" Emily burst into tears. "It wasn't my fault." "Not your fault?" Her father cut in. "The whole town is talking about how you mocked your mother-in-law. Do you know how that makes us look? Disrespectful. Classless." Their words were sharper than mine had ever been. They stormed out without waiting for an answer, leaving Emily crumpled on the couch, shaking. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, watching quietly. She lifted her head once, her eyes meeting mine. For the first time, there was no arrogance there, only fear. "You did this," she whispered hoarsely. "You destroyed us." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The truth was written all over the unpaid bills scattered across the coffee table, the contractor notices taped to the door, the silence of a son who no longer had the words to defend her. The collapse was complete. And yet, something in me knew it wasn't finished. Not until I looked her in the eye. Not until I gave her the same words she had once given me, cold, cutting, unforgettable. That moment was coming, and she knew it. The house was silent when it happened. No music, no laughter, no footsteps rushing down the stairs. Just silence heavy enough to press against the walls. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping tea, when Emily appeared in the doorway. Her hair was unkempt, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She looked nothing like the confident bride who had strutted down the aisle just weeks earlier. She hesitated, then sank to her knees right there on the tile floor. "Please," she whispered. "Please fix it. Call the lawyer. Tell him it was a mistake. I'll do whatever you want. I'll say whatever you want. Just give us the money back." Her voice cracked. She pressed her palms together as if she were praying to me. Kevin stood behind her, his face pale, his tie loosened, his shoulders sagging like the weight of the world had finally crushed him. He didn't speak. He didn't defend her. He just stared at me, waiting, hoping. I set my teacup down carefully, the clink of porcelain sharp in the quiet. For a long moment, I simply studied them, the couple who had laughed at me, dismissed me, locked me in the attic of my own home. Now they were the ones trapped, cornered by the consequences of their own cruelty. "You wanted me in the corner," I said evenly. "Fine. From now on, I'll watch your marriage collapse from the best seat in the house." Emily let out a broken sob, collapsing fully onto the floor. Kevin closed his eyes, his jaw tight, but he said nothing. He couldn't. I stood, my back straight, my steps steady, and walked past them both. The sunlight from the front door spilled over me as I opened it and stepped outside. Behind me, the house echoed with their misery, but I didn't look back. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one left in the corner. I was the one who walked away.